Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Shalom.
Shalom.
First and foremost, we want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachakwadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the elect. Okay, got the Elder Yasasak from GMS Dallas here, Shaquat from GMS Dallas, and myself, Aina. And pretty much, we're coming towards wrapping up this series of First Samuel, the book of First Samuel. We're doing chapters 29 and 30 today. So we've done, from chapter 1 all the way up until now, we're doing chapter 29. So we're going to continue what we left off last time. Basically, in chapter 9, in chapter 28, we saw that Saul had went and inquired of familiar spirits and basically got condemned to death. And ultimately, we're going to see what David was doing and the events that pretty much transpired right before Saul's death. So let's go ahead and get actually we can get that Romans that which is written before I learned it was that Romans 15, yeah. And then I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen real quick, read the first couple of verses. Share this, yeah, because we gotta paint the battlefield. Got to paint the picture of the battlefield first. So this is 1 Samuel chapter 30 and verse 1. It says, and it came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped the chapter. I was reading ahead. My bad. This is the chapter we're going to start in. This is 1 Samuel chapter 29 and verse 1. Okay, it says, now the Philistines gathered together all their armies to Aphek. Okay, now Aphek was a city, of course. Let's get that word in the Hebrew. And that word Aphek is Strong's H. Apak. It says enclosure. It says a Canaanite city near Jezreel. And I know we had actually. Let's get that Romans, and then after that, we're going to get 1 Samuel 4. Go ahead and get that Romans Bible shot.
This is Romans chapter 15, verse 4. It says, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
Right. So the reason why we're going over this
history. Hey, Salakia. Hey, y'all go ahead and continue. Yeah, y'all go ahead and continue. But yeah, that meeting that I thought got canceled, that whole on.
Okay, call to WAP, and it's a spirit because I still got a partner. Yeah.
Okay, Con, that's what's up. So I'm just go ahead and mute my shit.
Okay, Con. It says, actually read that again, Baba Kusha.
This is Romans chapter 15, verse 4. Mm-hmm. It says, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
Right. So this is the comfort and the patience that we get when we read the history of our forefathers, man, which again, we go over this all the time. Esau does not teach this in school. We're not going to learn it in college. We have to go through the scriptures and with the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai be able to internalize the spiritual lessons that are taught. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to 1 Samuel chapter 4 because that city Achish is a city that has a little bit of history, and basically it was a city that was commonly pitched on by the Philistines in order whenever we were going to go to war. Now, of course, we went over this chapter in the past, but read verse 1, Baba Kusha.
1 Samuel chapter 4, verse 1 reads, and the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out against the Philistines to battle and pitched beside Ebenezer, and the Philistines pitched in Aphek.
Right. So again, this is a city that was situated close to the border of Israel, because again, we're talking about the Philistines, which is a classification of Canaanites. So there's different, Canaanites, but the Philistines were, basically a tribe from the Canaanites, and they dwelt on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. You see, as you can see here, right? And so I'm going to zoom in a little bit. If you can follow my mouse, these are the cities that typically the Philistines stayed in throughout, our occupation in in the land of Canaan. Now, this city that's mentioned here, Aphek, right? This city is located here towards the north of the Philistine territory, right? And Aphek was pretty much a what's the word, strategic location for the Philistines to gather there, because basically they were able to enter into Israelite territory by going down into the valleys, right? Like it says here, the plain of Megiddo. These were flatlands that were easily trapped. You could easily travel through them. Also, the valley of Jezreel, as you can see down here on the bottom right of the screen. So, and as we read, this chapter 29, just keep this in mind, that when you read 1 Samuel chapter 4, this is the same location that the Philistines pitched at when the Lord allowed the Philistines to take the Ark of the Covenant back in the beginning of this book when we started the series. So this is again, you can see the reason why the Philistines chose this location. I just thought that was interesting to pitch against Israel. So let's go back in 1 Samuel 29 and read verse 1 again.
Okay. It's 1 Samuel chapter 29, verse 1. It says, now the Philistines gathered together all their armies to Aphek, and the Israelites pitched by a fountain which is in Jezreel.
When we showed on the map where Jezreel is. Okay, go ahead. Or the valley of Jezreel, I'll say. Go ahead.
And the lords of the Philistines passed on by hundreds and by thousands, but David and his men passed on in the rearward. Okay,
the rearward.
Rearward.
Yeah,
gotcha. David and his men passed on in the rearward with Achish.
Yeah. So again, Achish was the king of Gath, and since we got this map, we're going to use it, right? Achish was the king of Gath, which is located down, further south in the land of the Philistines, right? And again, this should let you know that hold on, let me hide this. That this is the reason why the Philistines were constantly at war with Judah, because they basically lived in the same, area. They were, but it was two different nations, what's the word, separated, but it was in the same area. So they were constantly at war. So many wars and skirmishes happened along the borders of Israel and Judah, because of the Philistines basically constantly, gathering up their strength and coming back as soon as they had enough strength to gather another army, right? And so all of the Philistines, when you read this chapter, all of the kings of these different cities, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, so on and so forth, Joppa, right? They all came up to this city, Aphek, and this is where they're having this meeting. Go ahead.
Connie says, 1 Samuel 29 and 3. Then said the princes of the Philistines, what do these Hebrews here?
Right. So after all of the different armies of the different cities of the Philistines met at Achish, the other, Philistine kings, right? Because there were different cities in Philistia, and each of them had their own princes and kings. They were like, yo, Achish, I'm sorry. They asked Achish, like, hey, what's going on with these 600 Hebrew guys? They're not Hamites, which that should prove to you right there,
right,
that Israelites are not Africans, man.
Right.
It's a difference. You see, that's another. Well, you would have to go. People wouldn't even look to go into that, but that's a proof right there.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Yep. 1 Samuel 29 and 3, it says, then said the princes of the Philistines, what do these Hebrews here? And Achish said unto the princes of the Philistines, is not this David, the servant of Saul, the king of Israel, which hath been with me these days or these years, and I have found no fault in him since he fell unto me unto this day?
Yeah, because remember, David, he had fled, to the land of the Philistines in the past. And, when he came to Achish the second time, he basically made himself, I'll say like a bodyguard / servant / somebody that didn't have nowhere else to go. So he had loyalty to Achish. That's what Achish thought. Like, he basically was vouching for David to the rest of his people, the Philistines, saying, look, I know this guy's not of our nation, talking about David and his men, but you know, they've been down for me. Like they, you know, they haven't done nothing crazy, you know, to my people. Basically, they've been fighting off, you know, their own people, you know, from my borders. They've been fighting off the other people from my, you know, these other infiltrators from my borders down in the south. So, you know, Achish was vouching for David, right, to fight with them in the war. Go ahead.
Verse 4. And the princes of the Philistines were wroth with him.
Mm-hmm.
And the princes of the Philistines said unto him, make this fellow return, that he may go again to his place which thou hast appointed him, and let him not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he be an adversary to us.
Mm-hmm.
But wherewith should,
and like the scriptures say, man, never trust thine enemy. And you know, really, the Philistines they were in their right spirit.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because but our people don't. Oh, let's get that. Never trust thine enemy. What's that in Sirach 12? I think. You know, because what our people, man, you know, our people love trusting the enemy. They'll fight along. You know, they'll fight. They'll trust Esau and other nations, and you know, basically with their children and their life and everything like that. Let me know when you find it. I'm gonna pull it up. Okay, actually, let's pull it real quick.
This is Sirach chapter 12, verse 10. Never trust thy enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness.
Right. So again, this scripture, I'm gonna qualify it, you know, is advice to us as Israelites not to trust our enemies, these other nations, chiefly Esau, of course, and these other nations, right? Because even though they might come and act like they're on a righteous, you know, a righteous vibration, really, you know, they're just looking for an opportunity to strike. You see,
that's what.
But you know, same thing with us, right? Same thing with the other nations. They don't trust us, Israelites. Like, for example, when we go into a store, you know, that's owned by another nation, they're eyeballing you, looking at you, assuming that you're going to steal something. You see what I'm saying? And so things like that are kind of like mindset that's instilled in the other nations too. So that's what they were looking at David like, yo, nah, man, this is the same dude that killed Goliath, one of our own brethren, one of our own countrymen. You know what I'm saying? You're going to let him fight in the army with us? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's how they were looking at Achish, right? So go ahead and continue on the middle of verse 4.
Okay. Back in verse 4, 1 Samuel chapter 29, it says, make this fellow return that he may go again to his place which thou hast appointed him, and let him not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he be an adversary to us. For wherewith should he reconcile himself unto his master? Should it not be with the heads of these men?
So they were like, look, I mean, this guy David, man, he probably gonna turn on us in the heat of the battle, and be like, you know, like, hey, look, Saul, look, see, like, I know you tried to kill me, this, because you know, everybody, like, people knew, like, what was going on between David and Saul, like, you know what I'm saying? They knew, like, because David was a mighty. David made himself known when he killed Goliath. They didn't forget about that. I mean, it wasn't like it was, you know, 100 years later down the line. This was still in the memories of the other Philistines. So they were like, and this was their champion, the Philistines champion, and David single-handedly killed him. So of course the Philistines knew who David were, and they knew who they were going to war with against Saul. So they were like, look, even though this guy David and Saul not seeing eye to eye, what better opportunity would David have to reconcile himself with Saul than to kill us in the middle of a battle?
Exactly.
So that, of course, you know, they were like, nah, hell nah, Achish, nah, you tripping, man. Send this dude back, right? Go ahead.
Verse 5, is not this David, of whom they sang one to another in dances, saying Saul slew his thousands and David his 10,000s?
Right. Go ahead.
It says, then Achish called David and said unto him, surely as the Lord liveth, thou hast been upright, and thy going out and thy coming in with me in the host is good in my sight, for I have not found evil in thee since the day of thy coming unto me.
Right. Let's stop there, because Achish, again, like, you know, when we go back to, if you were to go back to chapter 27, Achish and David, they developed a relationship, because David basically was showing himself as a servant, you know what I mean, to Achish, because he didn't really have anywhere else to go. He was fleeing from Saul. So he just dwelt in the land of the Philistines. And of course, we're industrious people. We're a fruitful people. You know what I mean? Just like what Jacob worked for Laban. Laban didn't want him to go. He was like, yo, man, this like, yo, you so profitable, man. Just stay, just keep working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, Akish, he liked David, you know what I mean? But he had to let him go. Go ahead.
Verse 6
In
at
the
the
middle.
end.
Yeah, for I have not found evil.
It says, I have not found evil in thee since the day of thy coming unto me unto this day. Nevertheless, the Lord's favor thee not.
Talking about the lords of the Philistines. Go ahead.
Wherefore now return and go in peace, that thou displease not the lords of the Philistines.
And what does the scripture say? If at all possible, be at peace with all men. Keep reading, I'm gonna find it.
Okay. Verse 8, it says, and David said unto Achish, but what have I done? And what hast thou found in thy servant so long as I have been with thee unto this day, that I may not go to fight against the enemies of my lord the king?
Right. Let me see here. This is Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 14. Right. It says, follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Right. Now, there's another one that talks about that. Is that in the
it might
Apocrypha?
Be in the Apocrypha,
yeah, kind. If you don't mind finding that. But that's also in the New Testament, man. Which this is talking about, of course, being cordial with your brothers, you know what I'm saying, of course, and being holy, and that essentially is going to radiate towards the rest of the people out here in the world, But if you're not brotherly towards your brother, you're not going to be able to see how about Shem Shai.
Okay. Actually, it's Romans 12 and 18.
Okay, I might have typed it in wrong. Go ahead and read it, bro.
This is Romans chapter 12, verse 18. It says, if it be possible, as much as it's like, if it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men.
There we go. Right. Live peaceably with all men, if it be possible.
Right.
So, again, David, he was supplanting, the situation. He was supplanting the situation, and David said, okay, you know what? Ultimately, he had to go back. You know what I mean? Okay, go ahead. Let's go back to that 1 Samuel.
1 Samuel chapter 29 and verse 9. It says, and Achish answered and said to David, I know that thou art.
Yeah, did you read verse 8?
Yeah, I read verse 8.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
It says, verse 9, and Achish said, and Achish answered and said to David, I know that thou art good in my sight as an angel of the Most High, notwithstanding the princes of the Philistines have said, he shall not go up with us to the battle. Wherefore, now rise up early in the morning with thy master's servants that are come with thee, and as soon as ye be up early in the morning and have light, depart. So David and his men rose up early to depart in the morning to return into the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel.
Now let's get Isaiah 55. The Lord's ways are the Lord's thoughts are not our thoughts, because ultimately this chapter is important to understand. We're going to go ahead and transition into the next chapter. It's important to understand when we read this following chapter. Ultimately, the Lord allowed David to show his faith, right, and to show his obedience to Yahweh Shem Shai by putting him in a situation that he wasn't expecting. David was expecting to go to war with the Philistines against Israel, right, against his own people. But the Lord had a different plan for David, which is better off for him, because you know what I'm saying, it's not really, it'd be more beneficial to go to war with another nation than with your own people. You know what I mean? And the Lord gave him that opportunity. So let's get this and continue on in this 1 Samuel. Yeah, let me check the comment board real quick. Let me see. Okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and continue on.
All right, so you want me to just go into chapter 30 or read first?
Say what?
55.
Oh, yeah. Hold that on deck. Right. Yeah, let's continue on in 1 Samuel 30.
This is 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 1. And it came to pass, when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag and burned it with fire.
Okay, let's stop there. We'll get Isaiah next. And then I'm gonna pull up this map. So again, David and everybody, and his men, I'll say, were all the way up north in Aphek, right, with all the princes of the Philistines. So we had to go all the way back down right? Because Ziklag was close to I want to say Gath. I want to say it was close to Gath, if I'm not mistaken. And so he had to go all the way back down, you know what I'm saying? All the way back down. And basically just to find out that the Amalekites, which you can see, this Gath, you know, Ziklag is close, you know, to the borders of the Amalekites, right? So, which we know Amalek to be what? The Edomites, one of the tribes of Esau. So, you know, and really, you can see that Esau's, the rest of the Edomite tribes were down here, so they weren't too far off. You know what I mean? And again, this is just kind of like a overall general area, right? Like everything isn't just completely, but this to give you a good idea. You can see how that would happen because they had a little bit of land, you know, a little bit of territory. I will say the Amalekites did, you know, and so they went up and they saw that these other Philistines, they all left their cities to go to war with Israel. So what better time? You know what I mean? What better time to go up and plunder the empty cities? You see what I'm saying? So let's get that in Isaiah 55.
This is Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith Yahweh Shemi Shah."
You see that? And so ultimately, man, the Lord, he'll have a different plan for us than what we expect, you know, than what we, you know what I mean? Like we have plans, right? Oh, that goes into James. What is that? The 3rd chapter where it talks about let no man say, you know, next year I'll go up and do this and that, because it talks about Lord willing. Right. You see what I'm saying? If the Lord will, we will go up and do this. And I think it's the 3rd chapter.
For ye ought to say.
Yeah. I know
James, it's 4.
James 4. Let's pull that up real quick. Just, you know, while it's on the while it's on the temple. What verse is that?
You start at 14.
14, okay. Let no man say.
Oh no, it's like it started at verse 13.
Okay, yeah, I'll read it. It says, James chapter 4. Let me make sure brothers can still see my screen. Okay, cool. All right, James chapter 4 and verse 13. It says, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain." Like basically, James was telling our people, like, hey, look, you guys make plans. You think that you know, are going to accomplish those things that you set your heart forth to do. But keep this in mind. It says, verse 14, "Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away." So even like, you know, when we plan out trips and everything like that, like if you're going on a road trip, or, you know, you going, you know, hop on a plane, you know what I'm saying? You don't know if that plane is going to get delayed. You don't know if a weather issue going to, you know, slow down your travel plans. You don't really know a lot. There's a lot of variables that are completely uncontrollable by you that could prevent you, or you could just, the Lord could just make your heart stop in your chest. The hour before you leave out your house. So you ultimately don't really know which direction the Lord going to take you. So just know that whatever plans that you make, that you have to pray to Yahweh Shemi Shai that, you know, if it be according to your will, like it says here. It says in the middle of verse 14, it says, "It is even a vapor," talking about your life. "It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. Right. But now you rejoice in your boastings." So again, you know, we need to keep this in mind. If the Lord allows, or if he wills us to do this and that in this life, that's the only time it's going to happen. If it's his will. If it's not his will, it's just not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I just want to get that point. You got a precept?
Just real quick.
Yeah.
We hit the point with that.
Yeah.
I just got one more.
Go ahead. No, it's cool. We need precepts.
This is Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23 and 24. It says, "O Lord, I know that the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man that walketh to direct his steps. O Lord, correct me, but with judgment, not in thine anger, lest thou bring me to nothing."
Break it down, bro.
Yeah. So Jeremiah is telling you, he said, I know that our lives is not our own. You know, he says that it's not in us, but the Lord directs his steps. You see, and when judgment comes, he prays that the Lord corrects him, just in judgment and not in his anger, which is going to be righteous anger either way it goes, But he doesn't want the Lord to correct him in his anger, because the anger could, pretty much put him to death if it's the Lord's will. So Jeremiah knew that.
Yep. And ultimately, man, with the Lord's judgment, it's not like we said, we brought that out. Was that Tuesday night? The Lord's not a respecter of persons.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So he don't care about your status that you have in the world. He'll get you, man.
Yep.
You see? And so and he'll also protect those that love him. And no matter what their status is, he'll exalt those that, that are humble. Yeah. So it says, actually, you read. I'm sorry.
Yep.
1 Samuel 30.
This is 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse. I read verse 1 again. It says, and it came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag and burned it with fire.
You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So that city that that David acquired, right, through Achish, he was able to he was able to basically get that city, or was like a small land. It wasn't like a whole big city, but it was like a good enough portion where David, his men and their families and their wives and all that, they could do their thing, flourish and stuff. And remember, if you go back to chapter 27, David was going out throughout the coast. And we'll pull up this map again, and he was killing. He was going out throughout the coast, and he was handing out judgment.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So these various different areas. You know what I'm saying? Down I would say like down here. You know what I'm saying? He was pushing back them borders. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So so he was pushing back them borders. So them other nations, they was like ready. You know what I'm saying? They was ready for David, or they was ready to get their lick back, I'll say.
Right.
Let's continue on.
Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 2. And it says, and had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not they slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away and went on their way.
You see that? So you can tell that the Spirit of the Lord preserved the women, from getting killed, because normally they probably would have just killed at least one of them. They said they didn't kill none of them. All the sons, that they didn't kill none of the sons or nothing. Because if that was us, David was going through, he was killing all the women, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because he was like, look, I don't want none of these guys coming back and telling Achish like that I've been dusting off some of the Philistines too, because Achish didn't know. Yeah. Achish didn't know that David was. I'm talking about back when when he was dwelling with Achish, in that year, like the previous couple chapters, when he was dwelling with Achish, that year and a half or so time period. Yeah. Achish didn't know that that David was like, some of them people that he was slaying was Philistines. Yeah. He just thought that basically, he was protecting his land. Nah, he was killing everyone so that nobody could come back and tell Achish, like, hey, like David's killing some of us,
Exactly.
And so the fact that these Amalekites didn't do that to his possessions, David's possessions, and his men's possessions, including their wives and children, that was all the Spirit of the Lord. Okay, now let's continue on. You got something I can read?
I'm just trying to see something real quick.
Okay, I'm gonna read. Brother. It says in verse 30, so David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. You see? And this is a moment where they had to be strong, man. You know what I'm saying? They had to gird up their loins, so to speak, because they could have, a lot of people, in that instance, they would have jumped ship. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people in that instance may not have had the mental fortitude to be able to persevere. And you know what I'm saying? In that time where the Lord basically had it to where they came back home thinking that they was going to chill at least and to see everything, all of their dwellings burned down to the ground and all their shit destroyed. You see what I'm saying? This is stuff that if it was to happen to us in these times, how would we react? If you can't, if you came home from a trip, or you came home from working out of town, and you came home and you came back and your house is burned down, and your wife, and your 3 children are gone, nowhere to be found, how would you react? You see? And that's what, it comes down to. We have to maintain our integrity, man. You see? We have to maintain our integrity and trust in Yahweh Shem Yahshua, like Proverbs, the 3rd chapter talks about. We'll go ahead and get that real quick. Proverbs chapter 3, lean not on your own understanding. Okay, Proverbs chapter 3. Trust, this is verse 5. And then again, man, again, this is something that David did not depart from. That's why the scriptures talk about how David was a man after the Lord's heart. We're going to see how he reacted, but let's get this real quick. This is Proverbs 3 and 5. Trust in the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Right? Because again, you could start talking about this situation. You could try to start putting the pieces of the puzzle together in your own head, trying to start coming to different conclusions. Right? But if you don't have the Spirit of the Lord to understand, okay, Lord, what is it that you're trying to tell me? What is it that you want me to do? Right now, it looks very shitty right now, this situation. But how can I prove my loyalty to you? That's the sentiment that we can take away from the situation, right? I'm gonna read verse 6 and I'll go back. It says, "In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." And that's the key thing. Because the path that we need to walk, if we don't have that direction from the Lord, we could easily fall by the wayside, right? So let's go back to 1 Samuel. Moving around. Yeah. All right, shalom, brother. Come on. It says in verse 4, in verse 5, and David's 2 wives were taken captives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. Okay. And so, David wasn't an exception. He was also, going through it. Right. And he had to stay strong. You see what I'm saying? So it says in verse 6, and David was greatly distressed. Right. Because why? Just like how Moses in the wilderness, people were coming to Moses, complaining to Moses about how the Lord brought them out to the wilderness, just to kill him and all this and that. And he had to bear that, like that slander. You see what I'm saying? Even though it wasn't true. But David, he was like, damn, like these people, they looking at me like I'm the reason why all this happened. Right? Because people, man, look, most people aren't spiritual. Like a lot of people, like when calamity happens to them, when crazy stuff starts happening, to people in their lives, they start blaming the Most High. You see, they're in that spirit of Job's wife. Why still holdest thou thine integrity? Curse the Most High and die. That's that mentality that's pushed out in the earth when shit happens to you that's unfavorable. Okay, but the small portion of people that actually have a level of spiritual understanding, they're going to understand that if I don't take this time to glorify and magnify Yahweh Shem Yahushai, then I'm not going to be able to succeed. Okay, and so it says in verse 6, and David was greatly distressed, for all the people spake of stoning him. Because the soul of all the people was grieved. Okay, make sure I'm still good. Still alive. All right, cool. All right. Still grieved. Where we at? Okay, in the middle of verse 6, every man for his sons and for his daughters, but David encouraged himself in the Lord his power. Okay, so that's the key. And I'm going to see if I can pull up a cross reference here. David encouraged himself, man, which is a beautiful thing. You see? Okay. Here we go. We probably brought out a couple of these in the past. You see, probably brought a couple of these in the past, man. Yeah, I'm gonna get this one. I like this one. Psalms chapter 40:1. It says, to the chief musician, Psalm of David, I waited patiently for Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of an horrible pit.
Also, that's just like how it talks about when King David was going through all those things. That's where most of the Psalms came from. He was genuinely speaking on his life experiences. You know what I'm saying? It's just like how these so-called rappers, you a real one if you rapping about real stuff that happened to you, you know. But he always wrote Psalms about how he trusted in the Lord and how the Lord delivered him time and time again. That's why it's so many. You know what I'm saying? Now, all the Psalms ain't attributed to David, but the majority of them are. You see? And that vibration, and the way that he carried himself and the way that the Lord dealt with him is going to land on his house. It's going to rest on his house. That's why the house of David is so important. You know?
God.
It even tell you in the kingdom that the least of the Israelites is going to be like David.
Man.
That's heavy. You know,
Con.
Go ahead.
Con. It says, verse 2, he brought me up also out of an horrible pit. Okay, and that horrible pit represents the crappiest, grungiest situation you can think of. If you think that your day, is going bad and your week went bad or your month went bad, well, read some of the stories that the shit like this chapter here. Some of the stuff that David, that the Lord, allowed David to experience in order to test his, to prove himself.
I'll say, think about what's that, Amos 5, where it talk about getting away from a barrel, then getting away from a snake, then getting away from a lion. It's gonna always be something. Mm-hmm. That was King David's version of it. That's why when it came to his punishment for numbering Israel, he didn't want to have to go on the run again. One of those options was to have to flee from your enemy. He never wanted to do that again.
Man,
you see? So when you think about all the different things that happened to David with him, even though he was in the flesh, he had fleshly thoughts and all those different things that we do, but the Lord was directing his steps. When it talks about a righteous man, when it talks about a man doing what he's supposed to do and his enemies being at peace with him, you see all those different things in David. You saw those things in Yahushua. You see? So with the examples that we given, with these things written aforetime for our learning, it lets us know not to panic. It lets us know prayer over panic. Saul panicked. David prayed. How many Psalms are attributed to Saul?
Man.
You see what I mean?
Go
ahead.
It says, out of the miry clay and set my feet upon a rock and establish my goings. Right? And who's ultimately our foundation? Who's that solid foundation? Yahushua, man. You see?
That's what I'm saying. That's why David called Solomon his Lord. He was speaking in the spirit for those that can receive it.
That's right. Right. So let's go back here. Oh yeah,
Go ahead.
Yep. So let's go back here to First Samuel 30, and I read verse 6. So verse 7, it says, and David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, and remember Ahimelech, and was basically the chief priest at that time, and well, he was dead by this point, but Saul killed him, and all the other priests, he slew the whole city of the priests. Talking about Saul, right? So Abiathar was the only remaining son of Ahimelech, right? And so ultimately he became, by process of elimination, the next priest, right? It says, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And so remember how Abiathar, the only thing he brought with him when he fled from the city of the priest was the ephod, man. Okay, he ended up fleeing to David. So David had the ephod that whole time that he was catching all his hell, right?
Right. And when it comes to the ephod, notice when David tapped into the ephod, he was in dire straits.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Every time. I would say him tapping into the ephod is him putting his trust in the Lord. Those two things are synonymous. That's one way of saying saying it. You see, it talks about it constantly talks about how David trusted in the Lord. You see, David made decisions on his own. He had integrity, all those different things. But when it came to the point to where it was bigger than him, he went straight to the Lord. Lord, tell me this. Tell me what to do. What you want me to do, Lord? I want to do what you want me to do. I don't want to mess this up. He always had that mentality.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And the ephod, I would say the between the ephod, the urim and the thummim, and all the things that the priest had, that's how they communicated with the Lord to know whether or not to go to war, whether not to go to war. You see,
Man,
you got it.
Yep. That word.
And even when the ephod didn't come into play, the Lord put the spirit on Abigail to let him know. No. Wait a minute. Don't do that.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? With the holding the ball situation, the Lord always put somebody or something around to keep David straight.
Man, that's heavy. Yep, that word ephod is Strong's H646. Apawad. It says a priestly garment. Okay, it's a priestly garment, a shoulder cape or a mantle, outer garment. It says worn by an ordinary priest and made of white linen, typically. It says worn by the high priest, which is woven of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and linen threads, provided with shoulder pieces and a breastpiece of like material, ornamented with gems and gold. Okay, and so that's what David wanted to be brought forth, right? Because when you put the ephod on, basically, you know, you incur the spirit of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. It's basically used, you could say, like as a conduit to invoke the spirit of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, and that's what David, he never deviated from that, right? So continuing on in verse 8. Oh yeah, verse 8, it says, and David inquired at the Lord Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? Right? And these are things, like, you know, that we can apply to our daily lives. Like if you're going through something right now, you watch this video, you're going through something that you don't know which way to go, or you don't know what decision to make. And of course, you know, brothers are there for counsel. Like the scriptures say, you know, do nothing without counsel. You know, at this point, David didn't have anybody that he can consult in the flesh. So it led to him consulting to Yahweh Shem Yahshua. And there's nothing wrong with praying to the Lord and asking for him to give you, you know, direction on which decision to make. And he can answer you through a brother. A lot of times that's what happens, you know, or in other ways. Okay. But ultimately, the Lord answered David, right? It says in the middle of verse 8, and he answered him and said, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. So look at that. Look at the blessing that we have as Israelites to actually have the ability to consult with the Most High and know for a surety that whatever the Most High tells us, that's what's going to happen. That's a beautiful thing, man. You see, because the scriptures say, we read Isaiah 55 earlier, but we didn't get the part where it talks about the Lord's word is not going to return unto him void. So whatever the Lord says, that's what's going to come to pass, man. Okay. And so that's the comforting part. Imagine that comfort that David got when he heard that. That's the comfort that we get when we read the scriptures that talk about, you know, like, for example, Revelation 13 and 9 and 10. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword, so on and so forth. Knowing that one day the Lord is going to deliver us out of this crap hole known as Babylon the Great, or AKA America. Okay. And so this is the comfort, okay, that the spirit of the Heavenly Father brings, okay, that assurance. And it says in verse 9, so David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those who were left behind stayed. Okay. So again, they kind of split off, you know, because there was a lot of traveling going on. You know, they were still very tired from, you know, going from all the way up from what was that city, Aphek, I believe it was, all the way back down to Gath, right? And then just to find this out, that they had to go find out where their children, like, you know, where their daughters and their sons and their wives were, right? So some of them were, some of them were tired. So verse 10, David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook Besor. Right. So there was like, a body of water that they had to cross. And they were like, man, like 200 men just stayed behind and abode, they stayed behind because they couldn't really take it, what I'm saying? Like all the stuff that was going on. So they just stayed behind. They were physically tired, all that. It says in verse 11, and they found an Egyptian in the field. Right. So, and this is the thing, man, being able to persevere when you tired like that, because the other 400 men that went on, of course, they were tired too. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, man, bro, we don't feel like continuing on, but we have to. You see what I'm saying? We have to, man. It's our reasonable service. You see, sometimes we don't have the motivation, you know what I mean? But when we tap into the spirit, I got to get it now. I'm thinking about it.
Go on, get it
then. Yeah, man.
All right, I'm good to go now. My meeting over with.
Hey, call all y'all about shy. All right, this is 2 Corinthians. Yeah, man, tell me about it. Same here. 2 Corinthians 4:16. It says, "For which." Hold on, let me pull up. Let me see here. No, I'm gonna get straight to the point. 2 Corinthians 4:16. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. You see, so we're not gonna faint, man, because of our flesh being tired, because we know that the Lord has given us that spiritual gas to keep going. You see what I'm saying? Like Moses, it talked about, like, even in his old age of the last days of his life. You see what I'm saying? It talks about how Moses' eyes were not faint. He still had a strong, vigorous, vibrant spirit. You see what I'm saying? Even at 120 years old, when the Lord finally, called the spirit home. You see? So, and I'm gonna get this next verse and I'll jump back. It says, verse 17, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding an eternal weight of glory. All right. So again, man, like, the stuff that we go through in this life, it seems heavy, it seems hard now, but so did, cutting up a piece of chicken with a knife when you were a little kid. So did riding a bike when you were a little kid. So did learning how to drive a car before you knew how to drive. Those all seemed like, enormous tasks that you were never going to be able to accomplish, right? Various different things that we've accomplished in life. But when we do it, it's like, man, that shit was easy. Right? So how much more in the kingdom when ultimately when the Lord delivers us from all these perils, right, that we face in these multiple different incarnations, even up until now, when we finally enter into those chambers of the Lord, the chariots, Lord willing, with those men, like, this gonna seem like a light affliction. You see, like, dang, like, this is all we had to do and we got this, man, damn, this is a good ass deal. But right now,
that's just like Deuteronomy 28, 1-14. When we finally get those new bodies and everything is changed for the better, we're gonna be like, man, bruh, you know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be like waking up from a bad dream,
man. Yep.
But people fail to realize that Deuteronomy 28, 1-14 is the kingdom of heaven, and that option never went away.
Right.
The creature was made subject to vanity for a reason.
Yep.
You see? So now when after this nuclear destruction, you see, you already had the flood. Now the fire is coming. After you have the fire, that's when you start forever. You see, we learning how to conduct ourselves forever based on what happened in the past. We have these examples. Like, we're gonna keep on saying it. The way Saul acted versus the way David acted, that's two different houses, all under Israel. You see, you got a 2/3 of the nation of Israel. You got an elect of the nation of Israel. The elect is the 144,000, along with the 144,000 spearheading the believers. The elect. You see, and the house of David, you see how David carried himself. You see how his men carried themselves. Same thing with Saul. It's the same thing with Saul. And keep in mind, Just like with these couple chapters that we read, Achish had something going on. The Philistines had something going on. David had something going on. Saul had something going on. All these different parties, all these different factions had things going on that the Lord was controlling all of it. And it worked out in who he wanted it. He wanted to have compassion on David. He had compassion on David, right? He didn't want to have compassion on Saul, so he didn't.
Right. Yep.
So what we take from this is there's a way to be in the eyes of the Lord and a way not to be in the eyes of the Lord. And we believe through the Spirit that that's why this series has been so compelling, been so edifying, because we can see ourselves within the text.
Man,
knowing that these things are coming for us. You know, you got it.
All right, so let's continue on, and I think it's just a few more verses left. Well, actually, it's like I'm gonna breeze through a few more verses. All right, this is 1 Samuel chapter 30 and verse 11. It says, "And they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water."
Do you still want to be sharing your screen?
Oh, my bad, Salakia. Sometimes I forget I wasn't sharing. Sometimes I'll be forgetting the steps. The water.
Okay.
Going back to the 1 Samuel 30. Okay, I'll read 11 again. "And they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread, nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights." Okay. So the Lord allowed this situation to transpire, where they found an Egyptian slave, you know what I mean, basically on the verge of, hunger and starvation, and they revived him, right? Verse 13. "And David said unto him, To whom belongest thou, and whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me, because 3 days agone I fell sick." So here it is.
Keep in mind, the Lord still on Amalek. You know what I'm saying? Saul didn't get rid of all the Amalekites. You know what I'm saying? And then you see what transpired since he didn't get rid of them. You see, right. But now with David, and David's journey to become king, he wanted to get the Philistines, the Edomites, and the Moabites. You know what I'm saying? So this situation right here, the Lord set this situation up to have David's spirit hot versus Amalek.
Mm-hmm.
You see, because as we continue to read, David ended up subduing the Edomites and putting them under his foot.
That's right.
You got it.
That's right. Okay. It says, verse 4. Oh, now the point I was going to say is the Lord could have had them just walk right past that guy. You know what I'm saying? And they wouldn't have gotten no tip on where to look or nothing. You see what I'm saying? But it's spiritual, man. The Lord, this is all stuff that's spiritual. You see what I'm saying? We read that Proverbs 3. The Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahshua, is directing these paths of these men to do this, and it says in verse 13, verse 14, this is the words of the Egyptian servant continuing. "We made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites, upon the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire." You see, so he don't know, that these men were the men and inhabitants of He don't know none of that. He's just telling them what happened, right? Mm-hmm. It says, verse 15, "And David said to him, Canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, Swear unto me by the Most High that thou wilt neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company." Right? So they made an agreement. Verse 16, it says, "And when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. Right? And the scriptures say, better is it to go into the house of mourning than the house of mirth. And these dudes, these Amalekites, they were, drinking and dancing, right? Happy, that they had gotten of the spoil, right? And it says in verse 17, and David smote them from twilight even until the evening of the next day. There escaped not a man.
Ooh.
Yes. So from the sundown all the way up until so it's twilight. It's twilight. That's the beginning of the day, right? So, so from the morning time, it says even until the evening of the next day. So for damn near for a day and a half, basically, we'll say it like that.
Yep.
David was, kicking ass and taking names, right? It says, and there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men, which rode upon camels and fled. Because remember, David and then they were just on foot. They were just, and so the other Amalekites that got caught, slipping, David didn't spare none of them guys, right? And this is the beauty of it, because the Lord brought them to that company, okay, through that Egyptian slave. And verse 18 says, and David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. And there was nothing lacking to them, neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoiled nor anything that they had taken to them. David recovered all. And David took all the flocks of the herd and the herds which they drave before those other cattle, and said, this is David's spoil.
That's what I'm saying, man. So with all that happened, the Lord was controlling all those different things, man. You see, that literally happened in history. Now, when you liken it to today, what's going on through the spirit, the house of David, you know what I'm saying? The house of David, his 2 wives, Judah and Israel. You know what I'm saying? The house being joined back together, you know what I'm saying? Not losing anything. That's what I'm saying. This is a prelude to what's to come.
Man,
Yahushua, I would say Yahweh sending Yahushua back to redeem the nation of Israel. You see, with King David, with King David's kingdom being forwarded through Yahushua.
Right.
You see, the house of Jacob is the same thing as the house of David.
Yep.
Go ahead. You got it.
It says, verse 21, and David came to the 200 men, which were so faint that they could not follow David, whom they had made also to abide at the brook Besor. And they went forth to meet David and to meet the people that were with him. And when David came near to the people, he saluted them. Right. So the 200 other men, they were too faint. They basically saw David in the company of all the things that they had regained. And of course they were happy, relieved. Right. In verse 22, it says, then answered all the wicked men and men of Belial. Now, this is a thing I think we brought out earlier with Eli's 2 sons, the same phrase, men of Belial. And we went into it, basically men of Baal, Baalim, basically individuals who are wicked,
Sons of Satan.
Right. Unprofitable ones, the sons of Satan. Because even though you had men in David's camp that were valiant men, some of them, they weren't right. Even though it was a small number of men, some of them, even amongst that small number of men, some of them weren't right. Some of them were men of Belial, right? It says, then answered all the wicked men and men of Belial of those that went with David. So that 400 men, there were some of them that were wicked. It says, and said, because they went not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil that we have recovered. So the men that went with David, the 400 men, some of them wicked men, some of them that were wicked men, they were saying, look, these dudes that, that stayed back, that didn't, fight with us, we ain't gonna give them shit. You know what I'm saying? Except the wives that they had prior to, but we ain't gonna give them none of the spoils. You know what I'm saying? Which that was that was off. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah,
those
that was
men,
that's just like a nigga. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that
just
was,
like a nigga. That's what I'm
yeah,
saying. Because first of all, why the fuck were they so faint to where they couldn't make the trip? Because they had already been fighting.
right.
Like, goddamn, nigga. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's some House of Saul ass shit.
Yeah,
They ain't come, so we ain't giving them nothing. Okay,
yeah.
nigga. Okay.
But
But
here
that's what
it
I'm saying.
is,
But if the roles was reversed, you gonna have your hand out.
man. Yep,
That's a nigga.
yep,
You
yep.
got it.
And here it is, 48 hours ago, none of them had shit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's why it's important. Like, you know, if we get a little bit, like, if the Lord bless a brother with a little bit of, you know, relief financially or whatever the case is, like, we got to remember, we all came into this world with nothing, man. You know what I'm saying? The scriptures talk about that in James. You know, if it's in your power to do good and you just say, well, hey, you know, depart in peace, you know, the Lord going to take care of you, but you don't have nothing, you don't give them anything to basically make them more well off, but it's in your power to give, then you know you having faith with no works, which is dead. So, you know, these men, they were in that wicked category of being stingy, which that's the definition of a niggard, by the way. Stingy, a niggard, you know. But it says, save to every man and his wife and children, that they may lead them away and depart. You know, so they were bearing that grudge in their heart because they were too faint to continue with them. But this is David's response, again, showing he was spiritual. Verse 23, then said David, you shall not do so, my brethren, with that which the Lord Yahweh hath given us, who hath preserved us and delivered the company that came against us into our hand. You see? So David was like, nah, man, y'all tripping, man. Get these men, divide up the spoils, you know? It says in verse 24, for who will hearken unto you in this matter? But as his part is that goeth down to the battle, so shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff. They shall part alike. You see? Because they're, you
Everybody
know,
get the same thing. Just
yeah,
like in the kingdom. Everybody get the same penny. Of course, there's levels to it. You know what I'm saying? You got the apostles and elders and like-minded men on down. It's levels to it. But that's what I'm saying. The kingdom of heaven is that penny. That penny represents the kingdom of heaven. You see? So it's the same concept. And it's still dealing with the house of David.
Yep.
Go ahead.
It says in verse 25, and so it was so from that day forward that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel unto this day.
Let a king, a priest, right, made a statute, made an ordinance unto this day. That's talking about up until this day with me and you right here.
Man,
letting you know that David is going to be king under Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. You see those little subtleties within the text? A lot of people just read right over it. No. King David made that an ordinance for Israel unto this day. Speaking of then and now. Okay? The Lord set it up according to what's that? Ezekiel 37. Said David gonna be the king.
Yep.
And Yahweh Shai is gonna forward the house of David. You gotta be able to know what that shit means. Well, not that shit, I'm sorry. But you gotta be able to know what that means, man. Go ahead.
Yep. It says, I'll read verse 26 again. And when David came to Ziklag, he sent of the spoil unto the elders of Judah, even to his friends. Because remember, when David was, you know, this is for David's first major W, like, you know, on a sense of actually like acquiring, you know, high levels of spoil, because those Amalekites, they had spoiled some other cities too. So they got all the stuff that the Amalekites had got. And, you know, David's men, they pretty much were content with what they had, you know, but David had an excess, you know, and sent gifts. He had enough to send gifts to those that supported him back, you know, when he was fleeing from Saul, right? And it says, even to his friends, saying, behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. Okay. And it says, to them which were in Bethel, and to them which were in South Ramoth, and to them which were in Jatir, and to them which were in Aroer, and to them which were in Sifmoth, and to them which were in Estetama. It says, and to them which were in Rakal, and to them which were in the cities of the Jeremielites, and to them which were in the cities of the Kenites, and to them which were in Hormah, and to them which were in Karashan, and to them which were in Hathak, and to them which were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men were wont to hunt. Okay, so all the places that David basically had favor and support in, David sent those. He sent those gifts to those places, man. Okay, so that's the story of how the Lord turned a situation that was completely unexpected and looked like the worst case scenario in a matter of a day and a half, 2 days. He just he multiplied. He just basically made a situation that looked completely what's the word, like, to where you wasn't going to be able to get that stuff back. It looked like hopeless. Basically, he made it to where it turned into a blessing, man.
I will say, so with David, with the Lord putting the spirit on David to go back and get everything, that was just like with the situation with Abraham. You know what I'm saying? He sent him to redeem, like when Abraham redeemed Lot, David redeemed his house back. You know what I'm saying? Those wives, those whatever they had, all that substance, they got all of it back. You see why? Because David trusted in the Lord. He tapped into the ephod when it got too much for him. When his flesh started to get too flustered, he tapped into the ephod, asked the Lord what to do. The Lord told him, and he obeyed. That's what Saul didn't do. You see? So when you fast forward to today, you see the house of Saul rolling their sleeves up, talking about the name of the Lord don't matter, teaching hell, all these different things that these groups been doing, showing you how much they've been taking turns going off. And the men of the Lord willing, that's us. The ones that say, no, it's talking about this. No, it's talking about this. See, when you go back into history, see, when you go back and look into Hebrew, see, when you go look it up into Latin, ain't nobody else doing that. Ain't nobody else doing that. Yep. These other groups watch each other go off and don't say nothing. But they will unite to call us rapists. See, that ain't gonna cut it. Look how underhanded the house of Saul is and the type of shit he was doing. And look at his house.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this precept. Matthew chapter 3, actually, Matthew chapter 7, verse 17. It says, even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. It says, every tree that bringeth forth not good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits you shall know them. Okay, and the fruits represents the works, right? Represents a man's works. So you can tell by a man's works what manner of tree or what manner of person, what manner of man that he is, okay, and what his intentions are. And those that you see doing the will of Yahweh Shem Yahshai are those that, if we continue in those works, those are the ones that's going to be receiving that penny, like we talked about. They're going to be receiving that prophet's reward, okay? And so you just pay attention to a man's actions, to a man's works. What is he doing on his time here on the earth? And that's how you can tell what manner of man he is. You see? So that's how we should look and see, going back to the history of our forefathers, right? Model our works after righteous men and abstain from those that have evil practices. But that's all I have, Zaquan.
God, we can go ahead and close it out. Hey, with that, Lord willing, that was edifying. We want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rahaha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the Akim teaching about the Mayim Wa'amak. That's in sincerity and truth. Shalom.
Shalom.